Good day, beautiful people, and welcome back to my podcast, Life Treasures and Golden Moments. This is Natalie Silva. I hope everybody's doing well out there and enjoying the month of January. And we are in the middle of it almost now, and all over the country and the world, the people have been having unusual storms, so I hope we get through that and spring will suddenly be upon us. Well, this month I would like to share some things with you and from a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And the author is Richard Carlson, who has passed away so many years ago. And I ran across this author several months ago when I had watched a movie, and it was about his life and his family's life. And I thought, what a beautiful story. I have to share that with my listeners. And it has to do with simple ways to keep little things from taking over your life. It's a book that shows you how to keep from letting the little things in your life drive you crazy, in thoughtful, insightful language. The author reveals ways to calm down in the midst of your incredibly hurried, stressed life. And you can learn to put things in perspective by making the small daily changes he suggests. I'm going to go ahead and read you his introduction to his book today so you can get a better handle on what he has written. Before I start, I'd like to share this little quote with you. The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitude, and that was written by William James. And now the beginning of the introduction. Whenever we're dealing with bad news, a difficult person, or a disappointment of some kind, most of us get into certain habits, ways of reacting to life, particularly adversity. They don't serve us very well. We usually overreact, blow things out of proportion, hold on too tightly, and focus on the negative aspects of life. When we are immobilized by little things, when we're irritated and annoyed and easily bothered, our overreactions not only make us frustrated, but actually get in the way of getting what we want. We lose sight of the bigger picture, focus on the negative, and annoy other people who might otherwise be able to help us. In short, we live our lives as if we're one great big emergency. We often rush around looking for busy, trying to solve problems, but in reality, we're often compounding them. Because of everything, it seems like such a big deal, we end up spending our lives dealing with one drama after the other. After a while, we begin to really think that everything is a big deal. We fail to recognize that the way we relate to our problems has a lot to do with how quickly and efficiently we solve them. As I hope you will soon discover, when you learn the habit of responding to life with more ease, problems that seemed insurmountable will begin to seem more manageable. And even the biggies, things that are truly stressful, won't throw you off track as much as they once did. Happily, there's another way to relate to life, a softer, more graceful path that makes life seem easier and the people in it more compatible. This other way of living involves replacing old habits of reaction with new habits of perspective. There are new habits that enable us to have richer, more satisfying lives. I'd like to share a personal story that touched my heart and reinforced an important lesson, a story that demonstrates the essential message of this book. As you will see, the events of this story planted the seed for the title of the book you're about to read. About a year ago, a foreign publisher contacted me and requested that I attempt to get an endorsement from a best-selling author, Dr. Wayne Dyer, for a foreign edition of my book, You Can Feel Good Again. I told them that while Dr. Dyer had given me an endorsement for an earlier book, I had no idea whether or not he would consider doing so again. I told them, however, that I would try. As is often the case in the publishing world, I sent out my request, but did not hear back. After some time had gone by, I came to the conclusion that Dr. Dyer was either too busy or unwilling to write an endorsement. I honored this decision and let the publisher know that we wouldn't be able to use his name to promote the book. I considered the case closed. About 6 months later, however, I received a copy of the foreign edition, and to my surprise, right on the cover was the old endorsement for the earlier book from Dr. Dyer. Despite my specific instructions to the contrary, the foreign publisher had used his earlier quote and transferred it to the new book. I was extremely upset and worried about the implications as well as the possible consequences. I called my literary agent, who immediately contacted the publisher and demanded that the books be taken off the shelves. In the meantime, I decided to write Dr. Dyer an apology, explaining the situation and all that was being done to rectify the problem. After a few weeks of wondering about what his response might be, I received a letter in the mail that said the following: Richard, there are 2 rules for living in harmony. Number 1, don't sweat the small stuff. And number 2, it's all small stuff. Let the quote stand. Love, Wayne. That was it. No lectures, no threats, no hard feelings, and no confrontation. Despite the obvious unethical use of his very famous name, he responded with grace and humility, no feathers ruffled. His response demonstrated the important concepts of going with the flow and of learning to respond to life gracefully with ease. For more than a decade, I have worked with clients, helping them to approach life in this more accepting way. Together we deal with all types of issues: stress, relationships, problems, working-related issues, addictions, and general frustration. In Richard's book, he will share with you very specific strategies, things that you can start doing today that will help you respond to life more gracefully. The strategies you are going to read or hear about when I share them with you are the ones that have proven themselves to be the most successful by clients and readers of his over the years. They also represent the way he approached his way to his own life, the path of least resistance. Each strategy is simple yet powerful and will act as a navigational guide to point you in the direction of greater perspective and a more relaxed living. You find that many of the strategies will apply not only to isolated events, but to many of life's most difficult challenges. When you don't sweat the small stuff, your life won't be perfect, but you will learn to accept what life has to offer with far less resistance. As we learn in the Zen philosophy, when you learn to let go of problems instead of resisting with all your might, your life will begin to flow. You will, as the Serenity Prayer suggests, change the things that can be changed, accept those that cannot, and have the wisdom to know the difference. Richard is confident that if you give these strategies a try, you will learn the 2 rules of harmony. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. As you incorporate these ideas into your life, you will begin to create a more peaceful and loving you. Now let's dig into some of the things that he suggested. And the first chapter is don't sweat the small stuff. Often we allow ourselves to get all worked up about things that, upon closer examination, aren't really that big a deal. We focus on little problems and concerns and blow them way out of proportion. A stranger, for example, might cut in front of us in traffic. Rather than let go and go on our way, we convince ourselves that we are justified in our anger. We play out an imaginary confrontation in our mind. Many of us might even tell someone else about the incident later on rather than simply let go. And I'm adding this, in these days you don't want to even confront anyone. People are really nuts out there. Why not instead simply allow the driver to have his accident somewhere else? Try to have compassion for the person and remember how painful it is to be in such an enormous hurry. This way, we can maintain our own sense of well-being and avoid taking other people's problems personally. There are many similar small stuff examples that occur every day in our lives. whether we had to wait in line, listen to unfair criticism, or do the lion's share of the work. It pays enormous dividends if we learn not to worry about little things. So many people spend so much of their life energy sweating the small stuff that they completely lose touch with the magic and beauty of life. When you commit to working towards this goal, you will find that you will have far more energy to be kinder and gentler. Now we're going to talk about make peace with imperfection. I've yet to meet an absolute perfectionist whose life was filled with inner peace. The need for perfection and the desire for inner tranquility conflict with each other. Whenever we are attached to having something a certain way, better than it already is, we are almost by definition engaged in losing a battle. Rather than being content and grateful for what we have, we are focused on what's wrong with something and our need to fix it. When we are zeroed in on what's wrong, it implies that we are dissatisfied and discontent. Whether related to ourselves, a disorganized closet, a scratch on the car, an imperfect accomplishment, a few pounds that we would like to lose, or someone else's imperfections, the way someone looks, behaves, or lives their life. The very act of focusing on imperfection pulls us away from our goal of being kind and gentle. This strategy has nothing to do with ceasing to do your very best, but with being overly attached and focused on what's wrong with life. It's about realizing that while there's always a better way to do something, this doesn't mean that you can't enjoy and appreciate the way things really are. The solution here is to catch yourself when you fall into your habit of insisting that things should be other than they are. Gently remind yourself that life is okay the way it is, right now, in the absence of your judgment. Everything would be fine. As you begin to eliminate your need for perfection in all areas of your life, you will begin to discover the perfection in life itself. Now we're going to talk about people that are relaxed can also be super achievers. Let go of the idea that gentle, relaxed people can't be super achievers. One of the major reasons so many of us remain hurried, frightened, and competitive and continue to live life as if we're one giant emergency is our fear that if we were to become more peaceful and loving, we would suddenly stop achieving our goals. We would become lazy and apathetic. You can put this fear to rest by realizing the opposite is actually true. Fearful, frantic thinking takes an enormous amount of energy and drains the creativity and motivation from our lives. When you are fearful or frantic, you literally immobilize yourself from your greatest potential, not to mention enjoyment. Any success that you do have is despite your fear, not because of it. Richard realized to have a good fortune to surround yourself with some very relaxed, peaceful, and loving people. Some of these people are best-selling authors, loving parents, counselors, computer experts, and chief executive officers. All of them are fulfilled in what they do and are very proficient at their given skills. Richard learned the important lesson: when you have what you want, inner peace, you are less distracted by your wants, your needs, your desires, and concerns. It's thus easier to concentrate, focus, and achieve your goals, and to give back to others. In the next chapter, it talks about being aware of the snowball effect of your thinking. A powerful technique for becoming more peaceful is to be aware of how quickly your negative and insecure thinking can spiral out of control. Have you ever noticed how uptight you feel when you're caught up in your thinking? And, to top it all off, the more absorbed you get in the details of whatever it is upsetting you, the worse you feel. One thought leads to another, and yet another until at some point you become incredibly agitated. For example, you might wake up in the middle of the night and remember a phone call that needs to be made the following day. Then rather than feeling relieved that you remembered such an important call, you start thinking about everything else you have to do tomorrow. You start rehearsing a probable conversation with your boss, getting yourself even more upset. Pretty soon, you think to yourself, I can't believe how busy I am. I must make 50 phone calls a day. Whose life is this anyway? And on and on and on. It goes until you're feeling sorry for yourself. For many people, there's no limit to how long this type of thought attack can go on. In fact, Richard had been told by clients that many of their days and nights are spent in this type of mental rehearsal. Needless to say, it's impossible to feel peaceful when your head's full of concerns and annoyances. The solution is to notice that what's happening in your head before your thoughts have a chance to build and momentum. The sooner you catch yourself in the act of building your mental snowball, the easier it is to stop. In our example here, you might notice your snowball thinking right when you start running through the list of what you have to do the next day. Then instead of obsessing on your upcoming day, you say to yourself, oh, phew, there I go again, and consciously nip it on the bud. You stop your train of thought before it has a chance to get going. You can then focus not on how overwhelmed you are, but how grateful you are for remembering the phone call that needed to be made. It is the middle of the night. Write it down on a piece of paper and go back to sleep. You might even consider keeping a pen and paper in the bed, or by the bed actually, for such moments. You may indeed be a very busy person, but remember that filling your head with thoughts of how overwhelmed you are only exacerbates the problem. And that does this by making you feel even more stressed than you really already do. Try this simple little exercise the next time you begin to obsess on how your schedule is so busy. You'll be amazed at how effective it can be. Now let's talk about compassion. And this is chapter 5. Develop your compassion. Nothing helps us build our perspective more than developing compassion for others. Compassion is a sympathetic feeling. It involves a willingness to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to take the focus off yourself and imagine what it's like to be in someone else's predicament, and simultaneously to feel love for that person. It's a recognition that other people's problems, their pain and frustrations, are every bit as real as your own, often far worse, actually. In recognizing this fact and trying to offer some assistance, we open our own hearts and greatly enhance our sense of gratitude. Compassion is something you can develop with practice. It involves two things, intention and action. Intention simply means you remember to open your heart to others. You expand what and who matters from yourself to other people. Action is simply the what you do about it. You might donate a little money or time or both on a regular basis to a cause near to your heart. Or perhaps you offer a beautiful smile, a genuine hello to the people you meet on the street. It's not so important what you do, just that you do something. As Mother Teresa reminds us, we cannot do great things on this earth. We can do only small things with great love. Compassion develops your sense of gratitude by taking your attention off all the things that most of us have learned to take too seriously. When you take time often to reflect on the miracle of life, the miracle that you even able to read books about it, the gift of sight, of love, and all the rest, it can help to remind you that many of the things that you think of as big stuff are really just small stuff, that you are turning into big stuff. And I'm going to conclude today's podcast with chapter 6 in Richard's book, and it said, remind yourself that when you die, your in-basket won't be empty. So many of us live our lives as if the secret purpose is to somehow get everything done. We stay up late, get up early, avoid having fun, and keeping our loved ones waiting. Sadly, we've seen many people who put off their loved ones so long that the loved ones lose interest in maintaining that relationship. I used to do this myself. Often we convince ourselves that obsession with our to-do list is only temporary, that once we get through the list, we'll be calm and relaxed and happy. But in reality, this rarely happens. As items are checked off, new ones simply replace them. The nature of your in-basket is that it's meant to have items to be completed in it. It's not meant to be empty. There will always be phone calls that need to be made, projects to complete, and work to be done. In fact, it can be argued that a full in-basket is essential for success. It means your time is in demand, regardless of who you are or what you do. However, remember here that nothing is more important than your own sense of happiness and inner peace, and that your loved ones are important. If you're obsessed with getting everything done, you'll never have a sense of well-being. In reality, almost everything can wait. Very little in our work lives truly falls into the emergency category. If you stay focused on your work, it will all get done in due time. Richard found that it reminded him that the purpose of life isn't to get it all done, but to enjoy each step along the way and live a life fulfilled with love. It is far easier for one to do and control your obsession with completing your list of things to do. Remember, when you die, there will still be unfinished business to take care of. And you know what? Someone else will do it for you. Don't waste any more precious moments of your life regretting the inevitable. Such beautiful thoughts by a wonderful man. He passed too early. I think he was only about 46 when he passed away, but I hope you enjoyed this book that I share with you today. And again, it's called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all about small stuff by Richard Carlson, Ph.D. Before I close today, I'd like to share one more story with you, written by the author Jacqueline Covan. To love is nothing. To be loved is something. But to love and be loved, that's everything. In February of 2003, I was moving to Hawaii to marry my boyfriend of 4 months. At only 19 years old, I got quite a lot of advice before I made this huge life decision. Most of the advice could be summed up in 3 words. Don't do it. This was said to me in various ways. You're too young, you haven't dated long enough, it's been long distance, so you don't really know each other. But I was headstrong, determined, young, and in love. So I went through with my plan. My boyfriend, Matt, was a Marine. He had been put on stop-loss, which is a military term meaning that his unit was under the possibility of deploying, and no one was allowed to leave their duty station. Because of this, we could only get married if I moved to Hawaii. It wasn't a terribly hard decision to make. On February 12, 2003, Matt asked me to marry him. On February 13, 2003, I put my notice at work. 2 weeks later, I was saying goodbye to a job and people I loved. Most of the advice I had received about this marriage came unsolicited, like most things, and much of it was rather condescending. Despite this, the people I worked with at the sheriff's office were truly wonderful people. On that last night of work, they presented me with a few gifts, a card and a collection of cash that they had pulled together. I oohed and I awed over the presents, pocketed the money, and glanced at the card. The messages were fairly standard. Good luck, our best wishes. But one of my sergeants wrote out a really thoughtful, detailed message. The message in a nutshell said that despite your young age, Our brief dating time and our short engagement, our marriage could work if we worked for our marriage. She went on to say that during her marriage she had come to find 10 pieces of advice that were most useful. Then she went on to list those 10 pieces of advice. Now, I don't remember all 10, and since I'm not terribly sentimental as a person, I didn't save the cards, so I can't go back and reread them. I only remember one of them, and it was the best advice I had ever been given. It was a number 7 on her list, which I remember only because 7 is my favorite number. It said, number 7, say I love you to each other no less than 10 times a day. Matt and I put this advice to us immediately in our short engagement and our marriage. In the beginning, we would make a joke of it. How many times did I tell you I love you today? Only 7. Well, here are 3 more. But over time, saying I love you became a bit of a habit, a lovely, endearing habit. We tend to say it far more than it when we hang up the phone. We say it in text more times than I can count. We say it randomly when nothing else is going on. We say it in intimate moments and public moments. We say it in teasing, playful manner, and in a serious, romantic manner. We say it before we go to sleep. Sometimes we say it as we think it is the end of a conversation, and then we continue the conversation and say it again a few minutes later. We say so much that our youngest son once bragged that he knows we're happily married because you're always saying you love each other. We say it frequently, not only to each other, but to our 3 children who have been having picked up on the habit. Say it frequently to us as well as to other important family members. However, it is not just something we say, it's something we act on and feel deeply about. While it has become somewhat routine, it is never said lightly. Those many I love yous, too many to count, over 15 years, have carried us through so much, through dumb fights and through fits of laughter, through difficult times in our life, through triumph times, through deployments and welcome homes, through births and through loss, through mundane days and through exciting moments. When my husband can't be home because the military calls him away, when he can't call, and when he can't get online, when he isn't there to say I love you, I have 1,000 memories of him saying it to hold in my heart. The simple piece of advice in that card was the best advice I'd ever received. There is nothing more important than letting the people that we love know that we love them, whether it is with words or not. Say I love you. Say it and mean it, and don't wait for a perfect moment. That was a beautiful story, and it's so true. We do that in our family every day. And you always have to tell the people in your life that you do love them, because you may not have that opportunity later and you'll regret it. So that's my advice also. Thank you so much for listening today. It's been a pleasure being with you. I hope you have a beautiful rest of the month, and take care and stay well. And may God bless. This is Natalie Silver with Life Treasures and Golden Moments.